Now the rear door is probably the hardest of all the doors. It's quite a thin door and access is pretty limited inside, so you need quite slim fingers to get in there. Now getting the wiring in is going to be quite tricky as well, because it doesn't use either contacts or the rubber gaiter like the front doors use. Instead it uses a long plastic sleeve, quite a stiff sleeve. And it does that because it's got to accommodate an awful lot of travel, because the offset of the hinges, the point at which the wiring pops out of the bodywork to where it goes into the door massively changes depending on whether it's open or closed. And so what it does is it has essentially like a tensioning wire inside that sleeve, which picks up on the bodywork and in the door, and that keeps that nice and taut and allows it to accommodate all that travel without kinking up. Now they always fail regardless. It doesn't matter how well you maintain them, they always end up kinking eventually. These haven't yet. This was originally a minibus, so I think probably these doors didn't get that much use. I expect they mainly use the side door. All the catches are the best I've ever seen on this one, so I think that's what's happened. So they're still intact, which is good. But it does make getting some extra wires in there quite tricky. Now this one's got a light added onto the door card, which to be honest I don't really use. So if that's got 2 wires going to it, then I can just use those for the motor. I suspect though that it's only got the one, and they've probably picked up an earth from the door. If that is the case, I need to get another wire in there. So the first thing to do, get the door card off and have a look basically. Now to get these door stays out, you just run them along to the end of the channel and then out they come. Right, so have we got 2 wires coming into the door, or have they just done 1? Yeah, they've just done the 1. And picked up an earth from the switch up there. So I need to get another wire through the sleeve to run the motor, but I'll worry about that later. I think I'll probably have a look at the mechanism first, because that's going to be the trickiest part of this door. And the lock part basically just pulls off. There we go. Normally they crack in the heat, and they've normally fallen off long before now, but that one's still there. It's going to be easier if I take the lock barrel out, so this blanking plate here gives access to that. And just gently try and tease out the start of it. There we go. And with some long nose pliers, I can get to the clip which holds the lock on. That one's in lovely condition. They normally rust out, those. Look at that. And there's the lock barrel. Right, next up is the outer handle, and to undo this you need to hold it in the open position like that. That reveals a torque screw there. And then, without having enough arms, you can undo it. And with the 3 screws already undone on the mechanism inside, you can lift it up, release the bit at the bottom, and then it basically just slides out. It can be a bit stiff, there we go. Basically that section there, that tab there, hooks in behind this part of the door. So in order to remove that, you've got to lift that up and then slide it out. Obviously this was quite corroded here, which meant that it didn't want to pull out cleanly. But yeah, and that's basically how you get those handles off. Now the way these mechanisms work is they have a set of rods. One goes up to the top catch, one goes down to the bottom. And when you pull the handle, they get pulled, and that's what releases either catch. Now you can't actually remove the mechanism without first releasing those rods from each catch. So that's what I've got to do next. So you can see the hook on the end of that. You've basically just got to hook that onto that, and then it sort of follows round, and that's what stops it undoing normally. So to remove it, just the reverse of that really. The other. And that's going to be substantially harder with a motor on the side of it. Side by side you can see that again there's very little difference. Although interestingly the electric mechanism does actually have a different base plate this time, as opposed to the others which just had extra brackets riveted on. You'll notice the wiring loom also has a couple of spade connectors, I guess because the main plug wouldn't fit through the hole in the door. Now I'm pretty sure I tested this motor when I first got it, but it doesn't hurt to try it again just to be sure. Perfect. Now to get power to it I need to remove the whole door loom, so the first bit to come off is the tensioning cord. There's a plastic clip on the end which just hooks into a slot in the door. Inside the sleeve there's a stiff steel wire which picks up on the van structure inside, so that needs unclipping next. Unfortunately access here isn't great as this van is ply lined and carpeted, but here on one of my other vans you can see where it clips onto. By peeling a bit of carpet back and teasing the ply away slightly I was able to free it off in the end. Oh, and the large hole ripped out of the carpet wasn't actually me, it was like that when I bought it. This moulded rubber grommet is next to come out and basically just pulls away from the aperture, although you do need to be careful as you can tear the rubber if you're not gentle. To get to the wiring plug you also need to remove the rear light cluster. This is actually fairly simple once you know how. There's a metal tang on top which needs pressing downwards from above. Once that's freed, then the two plastic tangs on the bottom edge can then be unhooked. That reveals the wiring plug, which is mounted on the inside of the aperture. Now, I could probably leave this in place, but to make things easier in a minute, I think it'll be better to strip this out as well. And with that out, I can add the locking wires and put it all back together. Right, moving back to the electric windows, and the next thing to look at are the driver's side switches. Now, I could fit another switch pod on the door card like on the passenger side, only with 2 switches instead of 1. However, these blanks on the dashboard seem too tempting an opportunity to pass up. As far as I can tell, from the factory there were only 2 switches that were ever fitted here to the Traffic, those being the central locking switch and the extremely rare heated seat switch. Now, in the mid-90s, the Traffic dashboard was updated with new switchgear, and after a little research online, it turns out these were lifted straight from the then brand new Laguna. So it occurred to me that if I could get some MK1 Laguna window switches, there was a chance they'd fit straight into the spare holes in the Traffic dashboard. I ended up buying a complete driver's side switch panel from a 1995 4-door Laguna. I chose this because I noticed there were several different variations of switch, all with different coloured bases, and I wasn't sure what the differences were or if any of them would actually fit. So, will they fit in the Traffic dashboard? Yeah, perfectly as it turns out. And I also discovered the driver's side one has a one-touch trigger output built into the switch, which is perfect because I can use that to trigger the one-touch mode on the Rover module. Installing the locking motor and window mechanism on the driver's door was pretty much exactly the same, so I didn't bother filming that. The only difference was that, of course, now I don't have the switch pod to cover the window crank, so instead I've just fitted a metal blank to cover the hole. And because the switches are now in the dashboard, it makes sense to have the control module there too. That way it's only the 2 motor wires that need to go into the door. It's very light, so a couple of cable ties will be more than adequate to hold it up in place. The connectors for the switches were even harder to source than the one on the Rover module. Turns out they're not specific to Renault at all and are in fact made by Molex. So with the locking motors now installed, I need a way of triggering them. The original setup in the Traffic used an infrared system with a receiver mounted above the windscreen on the headlining. The remote key was the standard one used in many other Renaults of that era, with a manual switch fitted in one of the blanks on the dashboard. Not only are these parts incredibly difficult to find now, they'd also be fairly time consuming to fit, so on this van I'm just going to go with the universal kit. If you've ever looked online for these, you'll know there are thousands of options available, but in the end I chose this Hawk kit, mainly because I quite like the fob design. It's actually quite hard to find one now without any chrome on it. Anyway, fitting it's pretty simple really, most kits are the same, and once you've configured the wires from the module to match the motors you're using, then the only other thing it needs is a permanent 12V supply. Luckily the main fuse box is right here, so having unclipped that from the flap I can solder onto one of the permanent 12V wires. I've also picked up a supply for the power window system to come on with the ignition switch. And again, a few cable ties are more than adequate here. The trigger output wires are next, and this will connect it with the passenger side and along to the rest of the system. And for the earth connection, I've just used a ring terminal which picks up on an existing 12mm nut. If you're wondering, the Vargo connectors here are for the changeover switch for the LPG system. It's a topic I'd like to cover in more depth at some point, but I'll leave that for a future video. Right, moment of truth. And the central locking? Well, there you have it. Electric windows and central locking in a 25-year-old van. That should definitely make it easier to live with on a daily basis. This is my daily driver after all. Hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into the kind of work involved. I've had a few questions about the electric window kits after the video I put up last year. I'm not sure what the demand will be like for the one-touch systems though. It is quite a bit of extra work to produce them, so if you are interested in that then do let me know, because if there is enough call for it then I will try and make them. Now there's a few more jobs on this van that I'd like to do, so I will do some more videos with it, but until then, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Think of it as the predecessor to the and with those off the inner assembly can come out. And there's a helicopter above. She's going to ruin the take.
There's a camera right in the way, you wouldn't believe it, would you?
That's not going to work, that shot, is it? Oh, I forgot the grommet, you idiot.